Here we go. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen with you guys. All right, so this week, the lesson was all about poetic parallels and kind of explicit and implicit information and how to determine the difference between those two things. So just by way of reminders, this is week 12. Make sure you're staying on pace. We are getting really close to the end of the year. All right, make sure I get everybody in. Yeah, we're getting really close to the end of the year, so try to make sure you're not falling behind. I know I have a couple of you guys that are trying to like graduate early and get things turned in, even if it's just to kind of finish for the school year. Make sure you're staying on pace. You can work ahead. You cannot work behind. All right. Live lessons are required. Not showing up affects your grade. I know I've had a few people that, oh, we're out of town this week, or I'm sick, or, we've had a family emergency, and that's always fine. Just make sure you let me know what's going on. Because if I don't know what's going on, I'm going to give you a 0. Make sure you're completing 2 or 3 lessons in progress learning every week. They are monitoring that at the school. And if people aren't doing it, they're going to make you start coming actually like into the school to do them. So try to stay on top of that. Okay, so explicit information and kind of, I don't know if you guys are science people or not, but when you think of like an exoskeleton and an endoskeleton, right? X means like outside. It is direct. You can see it with your own eyes, right? Like if an animal has an exoskeleton, you can see it. So if there is explicit information, it means it is right there. It is in your face. The author is directly telling you what their feelings are, what is happening. There's the tone, the perspective. You don't have to guess. It's right there in front of you. So as an example, the sky was gray and heavy with clouds. We don't have to guess, right? We know what it looks like outside. She turned off the lights and closed the door behind her. Again, same thing. We know that the lights have been turned off, the door has been closed. We don't have to question that. He arrived at the meeting 15 minutes late. Again, it's kind of the black and white details. Implicit information, on the other hand, though, is when an author kind of uses figurative language or other techniques to imply how they feel. So, as an example, she stared at her phone, constantly refreshing the screen. Well, I mean, yeah, that's what she's doing. So, I mean, we can see that physically, but obviously there's something else going on. She is waiting for a text message, or she's waiting for an email or a phone call. Like something's up. His voice cracked as he said, "I'm fine," and he looked away. Okay, well, his voice cracking kind of indicates maybe he's not fine. Looking away, like maybe he's trying not to cry, right? The untouched dinner sat cold on the table. So, I mean, yeah, there's some explicit information there, right? The dinner is, maybe we've got this big plate of spaghetti sitting there. However, it's untouched, it's cold, someone's not eating. Why are they not eating? Is something going on? Are they upset? Right? So those are the implicit details. So we're going to look at a couple of them. Explicit or implicit. What are the implicit and explicit details below? She smiled and said, "Good luck," but her clenched fists told a different story. What do we think? What are some explicit details? What do we know? What can we see in black and white?
Yeah.
He smiled and said good luck.
Yeah, she's smiling and saying good luck. That is an explicit detail. We can see that with our own eyes. But then we have, but her clenched fists told a different story. Well, what do we think about that? What could that possibly mean? What do we think?
She doesn't mean what she says.
Yeah, she doesn't mean what she says. She's having to like clench her fists and try, to get through this. He packed the last of his things into the suitcase and paused at the doorway for a long moment. So again, with the explicit details, like we can physically see with our eyes that he's packing into this suitcase. But then when he pauses at the doorway, something's on his mind, right? Clearly he is dealing with something. So the red is explicit. She smiled and said, "Good luck." He packed the last of his things into the suitcase. And then green is the implicit. The clenched fists told a different story, and then paused at the doorway for a long moment. Clearly there is something going on there. So just kind of together as a group, we're going to look at this poem. It is called "Those Winter Sundays." It's written by a guy named Robert Hayden. So we're going to read them as a group. We're going to talk about the explicit and implicit details in the poem. So stanza one, Sundays too, my father got up early and put his clothes on in the blue-black cold. Then with cracked hands that ached from labor in the weekday weather made banked fires blaze. No one ever thanked him. So we'll start at the beginning with that first stanza. What kind of explicit and implicit information do we see? So when we look at it, the father got up early, right? That's something we can see with our own two eyes. He has cracked hands that ached. Have you ever seen? I know my dad used to work outside all the time, and he would have to put like Gold Bond lotion on his hands all the time because his hands would get so like dry and cracked that they would just hurt. Made banked fires blaze. We can see a fire, right? We can see the effects of that. No one ever thanked him. So no one ever said thank you for going in on those Sundays and working. So those are the explicit, the details we can see with our own two eyes. The implicit details, though, the father is hardworking, right? We know that he's even getting up on Sunday. That's the day where we're supposed to not have to do, schoolwork or work, right? No one ever thanked him kind of implies that the speaker didn't really appreciate stuff when he was a kid. Blue, black, cold, cracked hands, that kind of suggests like it's really harsh conditions. Maybe there's some physical pain that is involved as well. Okay, so stanza two, I'd wake and hear the cold splintering breaking. When the rooms were warm, he'd call, and slowly I would rise and dress, fearing the chronic angers of that house. So again, with the explicit details, things we can see. I'd wake and hear the cold, right? He'd call, we would hear our name called. I would rise and dress, so I'm getting up out of bed and getting dressed, fearing the chronic angers of that house. So we can tell that he's, scared of something that is going on in this home. So the implicit, so again, we're looking at kind of the figurative language and the meaning behind that. Cold splintering, that's using imagery to suggest that, there's some sharpness, there's some discomfort that's there. Now, whether that is physical because it's cold, it can be physically cold, right? Like the temperature, or it can kind of be emotionally cold. Have y'all ever been around people that like they're very off-putting, they don't have a lot to say, you can kind of tell that they don't really want you there, and it comes across very cold. Fearing the chronic angers. So there's some kind of emotional tension, there's some kind of conflict. Maybe it's a general unhappiness, maybe they're actually afraid of a parent. The speaker wasn't aware of love shown through actions. So he's afraid of this kind of emotional atmosphere, but he doesn't really appreciate that his dad has gotten up, 7 days a week to make sure that the house is provided for. Okay, we'll wrap it up with this last stanza. Speaking indifferently to him who had driven out the cold and polished my good shoes as well. What did I know? What did I know of love's austere and lonely offices? So explicit, speaking indifferently. So he's kind of just casual. He's not really disrespectful, but he's not really like, hey, thank you for all that you've done. Polished his shoes, so he wanted him to look nice. He drove out the cold, right? He made that fire so that when the kid woke up, he wouldn't have to be cold. Speaking indifferently, that's kind of showing some emotional distance. Whenever when you guys are close to somebody, there's a different way that you talk to those people than if you're not close to someone. What did I know? They repeat that phrase twice. Authors never do that accidentally. If something is repeated, it's intentional. And so that kind of shows that he's reflecting back and sort of regretting, like, what did I know? Like, I had no idea how hard my dad was working until I was grown. And then last, love's austere and lonely offices. That's a metaphor saying that, sometimes these acts of love, they don't have to be these, big emotional things. I don't know about you guys. I love watching like promposals on YouTube where like someone makes this grand gesture and they have like the sign and the roses, or they've got a band playing in the background. And it's this big show of emotion and show, of care. But sometimes, those acts of love can also be really quiet, and that's kind of what the author's talking about here. Okay, so what you guys are going to do, I'm going to put y'all into 4 breakout groups. I'll also send you the link to the Padlet. It has the lyrics. But what I want you guys to do, you're going to go read the lyrics for your assigned song, and then you're going to pick out at least 3 explicit and at least 3 implicit details as a group. So I'm going to stop sharing. Okay, so we're going to break out into 4 rooms. I will pop into each room to check on you guys. Also, I'll pause the recording while I'm doing that. We're going to take maybe about 10 minutes, 15 at the most. So I'll come in and let you know which room number you are, and then I'll cut and paste that Padlet link so that you can access it, but make sure you're clicking on that. Let's see. All right, so I just opened the rooms. So make sure you move to those. And I'm going to pause recording and we'll be right back. So what do we think? What explicit and implicit details do we see in your song lyrics? I think y'all had Let It Go. What do we think?
So I had one explicit and one implicit, and my explicit was the first line, "The snow glows white on the mountain tonight." I
Yes.
think that's pretty straightforward. Just
Yeah.
snows on the mountain. And then my implicit, I wasn't too sure about it, but it says like right below it, it says a kingdom of isolation. So could
Yeah.
that be implying that like it's just kind of lonely in the kingdom and no one like really conversates with each other? It's just kind of dark. Like
Well,
I wasn't sure.
sometimes you can be isolated even around other people. And so I think that's a really good point. Like, is it isolating because she's by herself, or does she just feel by herself because she's got this big secret that she's hiding from everybody? I think that's good. I think that's good. What else do we see? Somebody that hadn't talked. What do we think? Y'all got another explicit and implicit? What do we think, guys?
Well, I had one, um,
Okay,
but that was the first example that he used. So,
gotcha.
let me try and find another one real quick. I feel like "Let the storm rage on" could be implicit.
Absolutely. Yeah, because it can be like an outer storm with the snow, right? Or it can be like that inner turmoil that she's
Yeah.
feeling. Good job. Good job. Take another couple minutes and, find that last one. Make sure you comment on it on the Padlet page, and we will get back in the main room here in just a minute. Hey, hey guys. All right. So y'all had the Adele song, Someone Like You. She has all kinds of details in her stuff. So, what did you think? Well, give me an example. What was one of your explicit and implicit details?
One of my explicit was we were born and raised in the summer haze, bound by the sunrise of our glory days, and it's kind of like nostalgic.
Yeah, it makes you kind of look back and we tend to do that, right? Like when we look back at something, we only really remember the good parts, right? So would you say that that's explicit or implicit?
Explicit.
Absolutely, because it physically tells you what they're doing. So what about an implicit? What do we think? What kind of figurative language do we see there?
Yes, she gave you things that I didn't give you because she's kind of comparing herself to whoever the guy's with.
Yeah, absolutely. Which, especially as girls, I think we do that a lot. Okay, so come up with a couple more. Make sure you type them into that chat box on Padlet, and then in a couple minutes, we'll all get back together in the main room. Good job, guys. All right. I got a lot of high expectations for my Ed Sheeran song. What do we think? Explicit and implicit. Somebody give me an explicit piece of information.
I found the white lips, pale face. It's like the first line.
Yeah, it tells us exactly what she looks like. We can see that with our own two eyes. All right. What about an implicit detail?
So I looked at it, it's too cold for angels to fly,
Hmm.
and it suggests that her situation is hopeless and that she is unlikely to escape her lifestyle.
Yeah, that's perfect. Pretty deep, pretty deep. All right. Make sure you type that up on the Padlet that y'all have three of each. I'm going to pop into that next room because we've only got a couple minutes and then we'll all get back together in the main room. Good job, guys. All right. This is my last group. What do we think about Lost Boy? I need one explicit and one implicit. What do we think?
Kelton, if you want, you can do your explicit.
For one of my explicits, I said I saw a shadow flying high.
Okay. Yeah, you can literally physically see that, right? Okay. So what about an implicit detail?
For implicit, I have away from all reality.
Ooh, I like that. And because really that could be like a physical thing, like because you're isolated somewhere, or it could be like a mental, like, hey, I am just not present in this moment right now. Good job. Good job. So make sure y'all have 3 explicit and 3 implicit on the Padlet. We've got about a minute and a half left, and then we'll get back in the main room with everybody. All right, we'll pause it so I let them wrap up. Be right back. All right, we're going to start closing rooms. All right, guys, so we're going to start closing up the breakout rooms. Looks like everybody's coming back here. Okay, well, I'll hop back into the Canva presentation. All right, y'all did an awesome job. You had some really good explicit and implicit details. And I was looking at the songs when I was kind of putting this all together. And y'all came up with even some different ones than I did. I'm kind of impressed. I'm impressed. So on your own, what you guys are going to do today, and this is to get your collaboration credit, you're just going to complete the exit ticket at the Google form. I'm not sure if it'll let you click on it. So let me grab the link. See. Okay, get back into the chat. So here is the link to the exit ticket. The first question asks you for your first and last name. Make sure you do that, because if you don't, I'm not going to know what you said. So what you're going to do is you're going to go answer those questions. It's basically asking you about the poem that we read together a little bit ago and to pick out some details from it. So I'm going to hang out for a few minutes. If you guys have any questions or if there's anything that you need, please let me know before you leave today. Otherwise, you can go ahead and get to it.